Hello, I'm Maddie Kropp, Director of Annual Giving at Wyoming Seminary.
Hi, I'm Liz Clemens-Cadle, Director of Alumni Programs at Wyoming Seminary, and welcome to our third episode of
Sem Connects
Virtually.
This week, we'll be chatting with 3 lower school faculty members and the exciting ways they are using virtual learning in their classrooms.
We hope you enjoy.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We are in week 3 of interviewing the SEM community and are excited to hear what's going on in the lower school virtual classrooms.
So let's introduce our 3 panelists. With us today, we have Tony Loftus, kindergarten teacher, Sarah Mal-Torres, one of our 3rd grade teachers, Kay Ambrilla, 7th grade English teacher and chair of the literacy department. Thank you guys again for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes. The transition to virtual learning is obviously different at the lower school than it is at the upper school. So we'd like to hear a little bit about how that transition is going, especially with to start with the really young kids. So Tony, can you kind of just give us some insight to how you transitioned your kindergarten class from your traditional teaching platform in the classroom to this virtual learning platform?
Yeah, sure. So we are using a platform called Seesaw, and luckily we were using that in our classroom already, kind of on a weekly basis. So the kids were kind of familiar with the application, and so the biggest challenge was to take what we do in a day and kind of figure out what are the most important parts and make assignments out of those pieces. But because it was something they were familiar with, I think it was maybe not as challenging of a transition using that particular technology. Luckily, everyone has been great about participating and using the technology correctly. So it seems to be a positive, smooth transition, as positive and smooth as it could possibly be with how crazy it actually is.
Right. And you obviously, my son Jack is in your class, so I'm a little more in tune with what you're doing, but you're doing Zoom classes twice a week as well. And how do you see those? Like, how are those going? Do you think that's helping the kids with the interactive part?
Yeah, so I think at any age that interactive piece is so important for the kids, just to see each other and just to connect and feel connected. There are some ways they can connect through the Seesaw app, but nothing as authentic as actually being in real time. So those Zoom meetings are nice to actually get to see each other and to, I've been using them to do some lessons. Some of them go well, some of them are a little challenging.
I've been
but
there.
That's in the classroom too. So, you know, it's just a different, it's just a little different. But yeah, so I think it's a nice balance of real-time face-to-face a couple of times a week, and then working on your own, because the challenge with the little ones is I do think that there needs to be a little bit more parental support, a little bit more interaction with the parents, because, you know, in a day we give them a ton of support. So the nice thing about them being able to do it on their own time schedule is that, you know, parents maybe don't have to feel overwhelmed to get it done right, you know, right then and there. They can do it whenever they need to.
Yeah, that's how I felt about it. There are certain assignments I'll say, okay, we'll do that later. So it's been, as a parent of a kindergartner, it's been fantastic. Jack's happy, I'm happy. It's a pretty easy app to use, and the Zoom classes are just really great. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much.
So each grade at the lower school has special events that tie into the curriculum. Sarah, in 3rd grade, the Wax Museum has become a highlight in the spring term for your students. How did you adapt that program to occur virtually this year?
Yeah, so when I had heard that we were actually not going to be back in school for the Wax Museum, it was definitely a challenge to myself to figure out a way how we can make that happen for them. And historically, the project is done completely in school and is a surprise kind of for the parents and for the school community. And this year it was completely reversed. They did it completely at home, and it was a surprise to Elizabeth Schmaltz and myself. We had spent probably 2 weeks gearing them up for it, breaking it apart for them, talking to them how to do their research. And let's see, the Wednesday before last, we had them dress up in their costumes, and they came into a Zoom with Elizabeth and myself, and they practiced their speech in character. And then they had their parents actually record them, and we put it on a platform called Flipgrid. And all of the kids did that. And the next day, we were able to share out the link to not only the parents and their families, but we were able to share the link to other teachers and the entire SEM community. So everybody was able to go in and watch the kids' wax museum exhibits, and they were able to also comment and kind of interact, and the kids were able to interact in character with each other on Flipgrid. So it turned out to be a really great experience for us all, and it was kind of fun to watch them as they posted their videos all day. It made me happy, and I think it made them happy to see each other's hard work.
Sarah, real quick, just for those people who don't know what the Wax Museum is, could you just give a little bit of insight into what the kids are actually doing?
Sure. So we do a biography unit in third grade, and to culminate the biography unit, the students choose a historical figure or a figure that has had a special impact on their industry, and they do a research project, and we usually transform the library into a wax museum, and the kids dress up as that figure. They create a backdrop, they memorize like a 1-minute speech in character, and people are able to go around and press their wax museum button, and it brings them to life. So that's a little bit about the wax museum.
All right, so a rite of passage for our 8th graders is the 8th grade speech and their presentations. So obviously, now that we're not in school, Kayan, how are we handling the remaining 8th grade speeches?
Well, this has been a quandary for us, and we really wanted these kids to have an opportunity to present because they worked for 2 years on the speech. And so Cecilia Galante, who heads the 8th grade program, and I had the 7th grade program along with Liz O'Malley, we decided to work through Zoom to have the students present. And we will have our first group go tomorrow, so this is very exciting for us. They practiced today, and obviously there are glitches that they have in this platform that they won't see in the other platform. And there was glitches in that platform that they won't see in Zoom either. So we're hoping that it will go well. The one thing is these kids are just fabulous, fabulous people, and they're working very hard to make a great product.
So when they're using Zoom to present, who are they presenting to? Is it the whole 8th grade? Is it just a few teachers? How is that going to work?
It will be a few teachers and their parents, and we will record the session, and then we are going to push it out to the entire 8th grade. Then Mrs. Galante will have an assignment for the 8th graders to watch and comment on those speeches so that they do get this feedback from their peers.
Great.
Oh, and of course the graders, we can't forget them. They will also see the recorded version.
Right.
That's great. So can one or all of you give a little insight into how you think your students are handling this transition? I think we can all agree that it was a little difficult, even as adults, to go from seeing each other every day in our offices and classrooms to working from home and not having that interaction. And I think as younger kids and students, it's probably difficult to understand you can no longer interact with your friends anymore and sit next to them and study and read. So how do you think your students are handling this transition emotionally? How do they seem on Zoom? How do they seem over email, or however you're interacting with them outside of those virtual classrooms?
I mean, I know like you guys said, I teach 3rd grade, and we've been doing daily Zooms with them, even if it's just to read aloud. And I think the hardest thing for me as a teacher and for them as kids is, though it's real time and though it's face to face, I think the interactions aren't quite as authentic, right? I think that whenever you're in front of a screen, and your surroundings are different, it's just not the same. So I miss their in-class personalities. I miss that, just kind of that interaction and that just, I don't know, good times that we have at school. But on the other side, it is good that we do have the technology that we are able to connect with them every day. Because I do think that's helpful. I think the biggest part for probably all of our age groups, including the adults, is the social interaction, the recess, the playing with each other, the talking to each other in the classroom, the coming up to my table when they have a question, things like that.
Yeah, I would agree that, I think different kids probably handle it different ways. I have kids on Zoom who seem perfectly happy and just like their old selves. And I have a couple of kids who are super quiet and are never super quiet in class. And so I wonder about that, actually. I wonder how, if at 5 and 6, if they're really able to verbally express that, how they're feeling about it. I know my own daughter, who is also in the kindergarten class this year, she is perfectly happy to be at home and play with her sister. And, she misses people, she misses visitors, she misses going places. But she doesn't seem truly upset by, any of it. I mean, she understands that this is what we have to do right now. But she also has her sister. So I think about those kids who maybe don't have brothers and sisters, who are isolated. And I wish there was a way to, you want to make sure everybody's okay. That's a challenge for me right now, is not knowing truly if everyone's okay, or not knowing truly how they're feeling, because Zoom isn't necessarily a great time to be like, so how are you? I mean, you kind of have to keep it going, keep it positive, keep it upbeat. I haven't heard anything negative from any families or anything like that, but it's something on my mind all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we struggle with it too. Let's face it, as adults. I mean, we're not just educating the kids, we're also educating ourselves through this process. And so there are days when it's harder than other days, but I think that we all benefit from that in the long run. Life is never a smooth path, and this is certainly a difficult hill to climb. But I think that by working together, working with our colleagues, working with the kids, noticing when they're not up to par, we can make this the best experience possible for them and for us.
Kayan, have you interacted with many 8th graders, or you probably interact with them more so than any of us? How are the 8th graders handling this? We spoke to some of the kids from the senior PG class last week, and we're all thinking about them because this is such a special time for them that's not going as planned. How about the 8th graders? How do they seem?
Well, certainly they're worried about all these rites of passage that they're missing out on, just like seniors would be worrying about. And I think they're waiting on pins and needles to hear what the school is going to provide for them. And I know that they know that our leaders have their best interest in mind. It may not be exactly what they want, but they know that they will not be forgotten.
Right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us, and especially for everything you've done for all the kids to make this transition as normal and easy as possible, and for the parents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was really exciting to talk to them and to hear what they are doing. I couldn't imagine doing my 8th grade speech on I Love Lucy. This was before the switch to the argumentative topics now on Zoom. I couldn't imagine doing that. But
no, me either. Mine, oddly enough, was on porcelain veneers. My dad's a dentist. I couldn't imagine doing it this way either. I mean, it wouldn't have even been an option for us, but it's nerve-wracking enough. And then to mid-year,
make that
have to kind of change the way you do that is intense. But I'm sure they're going to do an amazing job.
I'm sure
they're lucky they have a way to do it.
Yeah, and a really dedicated faculty to make it work. And I do feel for the 8th graders. I loved 8th grade, and I for any of the faculty listening or anyone who remembers 8th grade, I cried at graduation like it was my last day on earth. I was so sad to leave the lower school, not realizing the great things ahead for me at the upper school, but
Right.
it is, trust me, that everyone is working for the 8th graders just as much as the class of 2020 at the upper school.
Right. Exactly.
A special spring term. And it's really exciting to hear from kindergarten all the way up to middle school that things are still happening. We're trying to make it as normal as it can be in this.
Yeah, Sem has so many traditions, which is what makes it so special. And it's great that the teachers are working so hard to make sure that these kids don't miss out on these traditions.
Absolutely.
It's not the same, but they're doing their best and everything they can to make sure everything is just as special as it would be if we were in school.
Yep, it's time to reinvent the traditions in a virtual world, and it's exciting.
Absolutely.
So
thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Stay home and stay safe. We'll see you next week.